It's the greatest mystery in literary history. A divisive question with highly contested answers. Who was the writer behind the pen name William Shakespeare? Welcome to Don't Quill the Messenger. Here's your host, Stephen Sable.
Welcome back, fellow Quillers, to this very exciting episode of Don't Quill the Messenger. I am so excited to have our guest for this episode. She is professor at Florida State University, where she teaches Shakespeare, theater, and book history, multimedia Shakespeare, film adaptation, and Irish drama. She is one of 4 general editors of the new Oxford Shakespeare, where her work covers much of the performance aspects of that edition of those great works. Her monograph, Young Shakespeare's Young Hamlet, delves into the textual and performance quandaries of the first quarto of Hamlet, which is something we're going to talk extensively about today. Her book, Shakespeare and the First Hamlet, carries her arguments concerning the origins of Hamlet forward in collaboration with other top Hamlet and textual and performance scholars. Her name is Terri Bourus. And Terri, I have to say, I just have to geek out for just a moment. I've had a lot of guests on this program over the years, but none who have caused me to be so giddy because of the work that you have done. And you're also a director, and you're also an equity actress, and you have such a list of credits that I'm just so flattered to have you here with us today.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. It's exciting to be here. I'm really grateful and happy that you invited me to come and talk about my favorite subject, Hamlet. It's the focus of my research, so I'm always happy to get a chance to talk about geeking out. I can really geek out on Hamlet. You should hear my kids. They walk out of the room quietly as soon as I start talking about it. So I'm excited to be able to talk to you about it and to your audience.
Now, of course, the first question I have to ask is the one that you pose, the one that you answer quite clearly in a number of different ways through your research, through your book particularly, and that is, how old is Hamlet?
Oh, that's the question, isn't it? I'm going to start with the with Occam's razor, and which is the simplest answer. No one in the early modern period, no one, especially not a young man, went back to school or back to university to find themselves or to change their career at the age of 30. In fact, most people during the early modern period thought the lifespan of most humans was about 30 years. So when Hamlet tells the gravedigger, when the gravedigger says to Hamlet, I've been a gravedigger for 30 years, and that's when young Hamlet was born, there's a story of book history and of revision and of early modern history, actually, that leads up to why the gravedigger says that to in the script for Q2 Hamlet, which is the longest version of Hamlet, and Q1 Hamlet, which is the shortest version and the earliest version, does not have that 30 years in the text. Hamlet goes to university. He's come home for the funeral of his father. He is at the University of Wittenberg, which we know. He's there with his friend and conscience, Horatio, and they're college-age kids. They're college-age boys. So I argue that Hamlet is 19 or 20 years old, and that the revision of the text to 30 years was because the major tragedian. Can I go on with some performance history?
Yeah, and then the question I would ask is, though, is it possible even younger than that? Because a lot of young men in the aristocratic class were attending university at even younger ages, like many of them even graduating by the age of 16. So is it even possible that he's even younger than 18 or 19?
Yes, it is possible that he's younger. I argue about 18, 19 because, or 20 even, because of his skill. Ophelia talks about Hamlet being a courtier. And if we look at the courtier, the expertise of the sword, picking up the sword and sword fighting, isn't going to work the way Hamlet works it during the play with a 14 or 15-year-old. Now, Prince Henry Stuart, James the First's son, who died before he could become king, was an expert horseman, but he was still working on the sword when he died at the age of 17. So I think the expertise that Hamlet demonstrates when he fights Laertes at the end of the play, and his understanding um, of the rules of sword fighting, the rules of war, he clearly understands this. So I think he needs to be a little bit older. Now, having said that, I know that Henry V was shot in the face in battle. He was shot with an arrow under his left eye, which he almost lost and didn't because of the skill of a physician who was able to take the arrow out of his eye. So we can have a lot of arguments about age, but my primary argument is that Hamlet is not 30. He is a young man. He's at university. Yes, he could be 16. And actually, I like that argument, Stephen, because then we have a little bit of less, a younger Gertrude. And the things that come into play around the age of Hamlet are his university education, his skill with the sword, his relationship with his mother. I doubt, and I have not seen or known personally a 30-year-old who's that obsessed with his mother. Hamlet is close to his mother, and I make the comparison between Margaret Beaufort and Henry Tudor, her son. He was born when Margaret Beaufort was 13 years old, so there's only 13 years between them. And she actually outlives her son. That is, Margaret Beaufort outlives her son, dies 2 weeks after Henry VIII is crowned. Henry VIII is her grandson.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of evidence that we can pick up, and other scholars have picked up on this too. Peter Alexander, for example, looking at Q1 and comparing it to Q2, comparing the character, because when we first talked, you talked about character and character development kind of going along with the way the text reads, the script.
Yeah.
For an actor. When you're 30 and you're playing Q2, you have to buy into that because you're performing that particular script. But even the actors that I've worked with feel that when they're acting the Q2 Hamlet, they feel like he's younger than what the gravedigger tells us, and what the
Certainly
gravedigger.
there is a layer of impetuosity, I would say. There is definitely a layer of immaturity in handling the weight of the decisions that are upon him. I think that he demonstrates multiple reasons why the electorate of Denmark made the better choice in not not choosing him to be king. I don't think he's ready to be king based on his behavior and the way he acts. Not until the end, ironically, right, as part of the tragedy, is that he truly matures before our eyes, I think. And by the end of the play, we think, well, that could be a king, but now he's dead.
Yes, yes, as Fortinbras said, he would have proved most royal had he been put on. That's that's the tragedy, the loss of who would have been most royal. No question about it. But we see that development through the quartos, whether you're acting Q1 or acting Q2 or acting the folio, indeed, which I think is um, an actor's play script that went to the printer. Whereas Q1, yes, that's a performance script, but I think it was a fair copy that went to the printer. And then Q2 went directly from manuscript to print uh, without being acted, I argue, I believe.
I
Um,
I can't goodness. I can't disagree with you, especially because I have as an artist, I have this belief that what we're looking at is an early work that then is later revised and then is then later revised again to create more of, the literary copy, the folio obviously being such a great project of, posterity of these works. And I think that Q1 quite possibly predates um, any date that we think. I think, and I know in your work you reference a mention of, like the Hamlet that we hear about sometimes. And we have references dating all the way as early as 1589, where Hamlet is being mentioned as having been a play. And I would argue that Q1 is a copy that might even date as early as 1584, 1585.
well, when you think about Shakespeare as a young writer, he's learning his trade. He does not go to university, but he's apprenticing, not officially as an apprentice. He's not registered that way. But I believe, I argue that he's with a playing company very early on, and he's thinking about performance. He's watching performance. He's seeing what is popular because he's also a very smart businessman at the theater. As his life plays out, we see him not only writing the plays that he writes and the poetry that he writes, but also becoming very affluent, making good business decisions. So I think early on he recognizes that there's a tipping point going on, and this all has to do with the Reformation, has to do with the printing press, it has to do with the development of secular theater, because when the Reformation broke up the Catholic Church in England and in Europe. But I'm going to talk about London right now, and I'm going to talk about England. When Henry VIII wanted to marry Anne Boleyn and broke away from the Catholic Church, creating the Church of England or the Anglican Church, there was a break in the lives of every single person who lived in England and had grown up for many, over 1,000 years under the Catholic Church and the rules of the Catholic Church, and liturgical drama, that is, church stories, Bible stories being performed, the York cycles, etc. um, the um, the theater began to get more increasingly secular. So by the time Shakespeare's born in 1564, but still in a little hamlet, a little rural area, 3 days or more travel on muddy roads between Stratford and London. He's in a rural area, so Catholicism is hanging on, but Protestant is, or the Church of England, I won't even call it Protestant because it was still very Catholic. And Hamlet is a play of the Reformation, by the way. I'll come back to that. But the Reformation caused a shift in the way stories could be told on stage, and it moved slowly and through an evolution of as the Reformation moved forward and the break from the Catholic Church became more widespread, and it became law eventually. The theater or the performances, I won't even call it theater yet, performances became increasingly secular in nature. They still had those liturgical or morality plays, as they were called, the themes of the battle between good and evil and the human soul and birth and death, but they were secular. And so by the time someone like, say, Christopher Marlowe, who was Shakespeare's contemporary, began to write plays, he was basing them very much in those morality traditions of the battle between good and evil. For example, Dr. Faustus. Faust was really, it's a great example of the movement between morality plays and secular drama, dealing with angels and devils, and an angel on your right shoulder and a devil on the left shoulder, like Donald Duck used to be,
I would argue
and
that Othello is very much an everyman
oh yeah,
play.
yeah, very much so, very much so. But this movement into secular drama and then into theater. Shakespeare is born in 1564. By 1574, he's 10 years old. There are pageant wagons coming through Stratford. They're putting on, and so he's seeing morality plays, and he's also seeing the miracle plays, and he's also seeing secular drama. And I think that he was seeing these players come through Stratford, I believe. I speculate on what we know, that that's exactly what happened. And so he begins to see what's popular, what do people want to see. And by the time he's said, let's say he's 15, maybe 16, he's literate, but he's not going to university. He's out of school by that time and working. He may have been a legal assistant. We speculate on all kinds of jobs that he had, and did he travel?
Well, here's one I haven't ever actually heard anybody speculate about, which is that, and you mentioned like the wagons coming through. The trades all had a story that they would be assigned to, basically, right? The masons would tell the story of Noah's Ark, or the carpenters would tell the story of Jericho. Do we have any clue? Do we have any evidence whatsoever of what, apparently he was a glover's son, right? So he was a leather worker of some sort. Do we have any idea like what story was assigned to that trade in and around Stratford at that time for these types of festivals, I wonder?
No, and that's a good question. I don't know the answer to it. But certainly he would have. Did he get up on stage and maybe act out in the in the Glovers Guild? They were called guilds, and we see them in Midsummer Night's Dream when he created the guildsmen, the rude mechanicals,
and they're this like hodgepodge mix of different trades, right? Like they're all different guildsmen, which wouldn't have been the case back then, but is an interesting sort of amalgamation of the concept, right?
Oh yeah, he's writing about men he has seen and knows, perhaps his own father. We can only guess about that. But my original point of moving through the Reformation to Hamlet was that at some point Shakespeare saw that revenge plays were really popular and they would make money and they would come. And I think at that point he started looking at plays, like the Spanish tragedy, for example, that Thomas Kyd is the author of the Spanish tragedy. Some have argued in the past that he's also that he was the playwright who wrote the Hamlet. I disagree with that, and my argument is that the Hamlet is what becomes Q1 Hamlet. It is Shakespeare's earliest play, his earliest attempt at writing a revenge tragedy. And it must have been short. We don't have it. We call it because that's a prefix we use for things that are very early that we don't really have. Uruk, which is the earliest city, begins with UR, or So the Hamlet, that ghost text that stands behind. Oh, funny, I should bring up a ghost, right?
You did that on purpose.
It's the ghost text that stands behind Kid and the Spanish Tragedy, but mostly for me stands behind Shakespeare's earliest attempt at writing a play. And it's not his earliest play that it comes to the stage, but I think he's experimenting with the idea of what he wants to do with this Danish legend, the legend of Amleth. And of course, he had to move that, and the end of Amleth is the letter H. Move it to the beginning of the word, and you have Hamlet, which is a much better consonantal ending for the stage. You don't want to sound like, Sylvester the cat. With Amleth, Hamlet works better for an actor in the mouth of an actor, as you know. So I think he's writing this play as he's beginning to be a playwright. Was he selling tickets? Was he traveling with an acting company, or a playing company, as it was called? Was he to a Latin tutor that Maggie O'Farrell argues in her book, Hamnet? Hamnet being an alternative spelling of Hamlet.
That is a very curious one that I think nobody can really solve the answer to. Is, the whole Hamlet and Hamnet connection is definitely a weird one to try to put together, I think, in the historical context of it all. I want to ask you again, in discussing Hamlet's age, though, how important it might be to the original story. And I think that even in the folio version, we still see these traces of heavy connection to the idea that Hamlet has not come into his majority. And I think that that's one of the issues with the Q2, with the folio versions, is that, here is this supposedly 30-year-old who is being overpassed for the kingship, who is not being afforded any lands or titles that we are aware of at all. His mother then stands to be the the inheritress of whatever jointure, which is what Claudius says of her, that they are going to rule in jointure. I think there's a lot of inheritance and legacy and lands and titles and legal aspects to this that are important to the play, that would make a lot more sense if Hamlet is indeed a younger Hamlet.
Makes it incredible better sense when he's a young Hamlet. We see that, and you're right, there's a lot of inheritance issues and legitimacy issues. Shakespeare writes about that in a lot of his plays, but in Hamlet, which I argue is Shakespeare's most personal play, and there's a lot more than naming his son Hamnet, who he's named after Shakespeare's best friend. Shakespeare and William and Anne Shakespeare's best friends were Judith and Hamnet Sadler, who stood as godparents for their children. And the twins were named after that married couple that were friends of the Shakespeares. And Hamnet and Hamlet, there are a lot of names like that we can go through, but we don't have the time. But where there's one name spelled several different ways, depending on the dialect of the place in England where you live. George Bernard Shaw makes that argument. An Englishman's way of speaking absolutely classifies him. The moment he speaks, he makes some other Englishmen despise him, et cetera, et cetera.
I've played that role a couple of times.
There you go. Yeah. Of course you have. Hamlet being younger makes Gertrude younger as well, and explains a lot about the marriage, the fast marriage to Claudius. What happens to a woman when she's queen and the king dies? She's queen consort, right? She's not queen by right, except Queen Camilla, but that's another story. And so to remarry quickly, you're a young woman. Let's argue that she was 13 when Hamlet was born, and he's 19, so she's 32, right? She's not an old woman. She doesn't want to be put into a convent or shuffled off to behind the walls of a castle. So, in order to keep her life, her rank, her place in court, she's 32. Let's say she's a very smart woman. She can use that marriage to Claudius, although she may love him because he's much younger than his older brother, who's been killed, the old king. That was probably an arranged marriage. Very young woman, older guy. Now she's Claudius, who's never named Claudius in the first quarto, is a diplomat. He's a Machiavel. He's a modern man. He's not an old feudal king. He's not an old Catholic feudal king like the ghost of Hamlet, the old King Hamlet. He's dynamic. Instead of going to war with Norway, he sends ambassadors out to negotiate. There's a modern politician being born there, you might say, as that as Claudius demonstrates in his more modern way of ruling.
He also makes it very clear that one of the motivations for the murder is not just to usurp the crown, but he wants her. He says that very clearly, that he wants her. He wants Gertrude. And he says it more than once. And in fact, in one case, when he's talking about what to do with Hamlet, he says, my queen lives but by him, and so I can't kill him because I don't want it to affect her the way that I know it will. Like he is lusting for her. If she's only 30, that makes a lot more sense than if she's 50.
Exactly. Can't you just see that?
And maybe the gravedigger is mistaken. Maybe what he means to say is, I've been sexton here, man and boy, 30 years. It was that day that the Queen Gertrude was born.
Yeah, he may have, that may be some kind of error, but we have to, as theater practitioners, we have to stick to the text as is, even if it's a compositor's error. But Shakespeare met very early on in his career as an actor Richard Burbage, whose father was a land developer and a real estate guy. Shakespeare kind of did a little of that. He dabbled in that.
No, he was most successful, I think, as a grain dealer and a real estate mogul, right?
Oh, yeah. Catherine Duncan Jones writes that book, Ungentle Shakespeare, where she talks about his money and his he was like Henry VII, really he wanted every penny, every pence, every shilling accounted for. Anyway, he's with Richard Burbage, and Richard Burbage and Shakespeare appear together all the time. They're listed in the Lord Chamberlain's Men right away, right? Henslow lists them immediately as part of Lord Chamberlain's Men, and they may have been in Pembroke's Men, they may have been in Lord Strange's Men. These are all speculations. Different scholars argue different companies, but in any case, Burbage is Shakespeare's primary tragedian. He plays all the big roles. He has a fabulous memory. I have a long article. I have a chapter in a book on on Burbage and his memory. Remember, the men are playing the roles of the women. So he played Cleopatra, who has so many lines. He, but in any case, he starts out as a young, dynamic actor with Shakespeare. He becomes the chief tragedian very quickly, and he gets fat and he loses his hair. And he's still in 1604-05, once the plague year is over and the theaters reopen, he's still playing Hamlet. And even in 1580, 1595, 1596, 1597, he's scant of breath. His obituary talks about him leaping into the grave and being scant of breath. So he has to fit that character. And so to put that in there, to have the sexton say, yeah, man, boy, I've been here 30 years, basically, he doesn't exactly say Hamlet is 30 years old, but he does lay it out to Hamlet that Hamlet was born the year he came, and old Fortinbras, etc. So he's got to make the text fit the actor, because he's not going to change that actor. Burbage is going to play Hamlet until he's can't act anymore.
Well, and the queen herself says he's fat and scant of breath.
Yeah,
come, let
right.
me mop your brow, right? Let me come wipe the sweat off of your head.
Yes, exactly. And so that's another argument to come at it through performance. Who's playing Hamlet? Well, Richard Burbage, followed by Joseph Taylor, and we have old guys playing Hamlet. Well, look at Ian McKellen doing it at 82 or whatever a couple of years ago, but that was an Ian McKellen thing.
Well, and then you have Sarah Bernhardt, who followed in that same tradition. She was playing it into her 70s as well.
Yes, and David Garrett.
I don't think Garrick's Hamlet was anything like any other Hamlet, though. He, was known for just taking the script and butchering the hell out of it and turning it into whatever he wanted. One of the things that I love about when you go to Westminster Abbey, and of all the different edifices, of all the different, dead artists, I think Garrick's is absolutely the most apropos. He's coming through the curtain. There are these scantily clad, half naked women fawning over him. I mean, it's just so David Garrick. It's ridiculously funny.
That's very true. That's very true. We get little bits and pieces of the inheritance of Garrick in our earliest films of Herbert Beerbohm Tree as King John, for example. Early films, silent films of Shakespeare, are played by these actors who were 19th century actors. And this David Garrick style of acting carried on through the different acting companies through the 19th century. I would have loved to have seen the Booths act Shakespeare, especially Edwin. But be that as it may, we can look at these films and see what Garrick must have been like, in spite of Hamlet's instructions to the players. Do not saw the air with your hands, etc. But anyway, back to his age. One of the arguments that I make is Burbage is getting older and he's playing Hamlet, and Shakespeare revises the text to make it seem like, well, he can't go much past 30, or we get into middle age, and I don't think he wanted to go there. But when we look at the first quarto of Hamlet, whether or not the Hamlet was written by Shakespeare, and I believe it was, I think Shakespeare wrote a script about a young prince based on the Danish legend of Hamlet, but also based on many things that had happened in his own life. And his understanding of the way that state marriages worked, and the way that very, very young girls were married to much older men. Um, the um, the question of the questions that were happening because of the Reformation. If we can get rid of the Pope so easily, is there even a God? There's all kinds of things going on, like in any tipping point. Questions, cultural, social, societal um, questions that are oftentimes addressed and answered on the stage or in storytelling. In storytelling, we can ask these questions in different ways so that we affect the consciousness of the audience. That third vital part of practicing theater, there's the writer and the script, is reinterpreted and performed by the actors on the stage, who hand it off to the audience, who then individually and collectively reinterpret the text again, collectively and individually. So these Reformation questions, what is who is God? What is life? What is love? What is evil? What are good and evil? And how do they count now that we don't have the Pope anymore? Now that we are looking towards learning to read, literacy rates rising, the invention of the printing press, etc., that all comes into this. Because with the printing press and the theater coming along together, we have those early plays.
Well,
And
and
we
then
can
you
see,
also have throughout the 1580s and early 1590s, the whole societal and world view among the educated, at least,
Mhm.
of what the universe looks like is rapidly changing between what Bruno is doing and what Brahe is doing, and Bruno lecturing in London about this whole idea of this heliocentric solar system is like mind blowing to people too.
Mhm.
And what we see in Hamlet is that Hamlet obviously knows this. He makes so many references. I could be bounded by a nutshell and consider myself the king of infinite space. That's somebody who understands what's going on in the laws of physics and astronomy at the time, the new revelations. That bespeaks a young student. That bespeaks the mind of someone who is in the process of learning and gaining knowledge, and as Hamlet is probably the most intelligent character ever written, voraciously consuming it as well.
Oh yes, absolutely. The shift from the Ptolemaic to the Copernican universe, where are we in the universe, and where are we in creation, and creation being now reconsidered and oh the perspective has changed of our own place in the universe. We're now in a heliocentric solar system. We're no longer the center of the center of everything. And
What is this quintessence of dust, right?
right, so all these questions. So as Shakespeare is, when he's a young man, he's writing about uh, he's writing Hamlet based on his the way that he reads Saxo Grammaticus or Belforet or whatever his source is for the Danish legend. And then it continues just like,
Now, Grammaticus at that time, that's a Latin text, right?
right,
And then
Grammaticus is,
Belfort, that's French.
yes.
So
And
he
there
would have
would have been,
had to have been able to read in either Latin or French or both in order for those to have been sources for the play.
oh yeah. I mean, Latin was, when he was in school, he would have had to have been reciting the long poems in, like the Iliad and the Odyssey, in Latin, because Latin was the language of the scholar. All scholars spoke Latin, and and as for French, well, the aristocracy for a long time after 1066 was speaking French. So French was in the English language and being incorporated in the English language. So whichever one he read, yeah, he would have been able to translate or have someone translate for him, but I don't think he would need to. I think he, by his writing, we can deduce that he was brilliant with words in many languages, no matter what Johnson wrote.
I'd like to shift to this layer of your research because I found it very compelling and intriguing as well, as far as, you know, nailing down the ages of the characters. And I think what we've established here is that once we look at the age of Hamlet, we have no choice but to look at the ages of all of the other characters in the play. And
Right.
one of the things that you point out that is a big difference between Q1 and you know, Q2 F1 is the layer of sexuality involving Gertrude, especially in the closet scene, which according to Q1 is a bedroom scene, and then later on it becomes a closet scene. In Q1, the ghost appears in that scene in his nightgown, prepared for bed, as opposed to Q2 folio, he is still armored, you know, capa pei, I think is what Horatio says, in describing the ghost. That's a big difference, isn't it? And that makes a big difference, especially when you have Hamlet saying to his mother, "Don't go to my uncle's bed anymore."
Yes. Oh, yes. He's very aware of the sexual nature of their attraction to each other. We see that in the opening court scene in Act One, Scene Two, where Claudius is introducing himself as king with his imperial jointress. She is with him. She is the queen, and their attraction for each other and their dialogue between each other shows an understanding that goes deeper than just a couple of weeks. I think I argue that this is extra textual, that old Hamlet is gone a lot. He likes being a feudal warrior. He likes to be on his, with the horse bros, the chivalric fighters, and so he's gone. And Claudius is there, or the king, Fenga, whichever, however you want to think of him. He's there, closer in age, and she's attracted to him. She seems devastated to not be able to be with him anymore after that bedroom scene. And that stage direction, by the way, is only in Q1, where he appears in his nightgown. And the old editors who used to create what we call conflated texts, kind of putting the best of each text into one, blending them all together, using the best, that stage direction is always used in the conflated editions. He appears in his nightgown because it makes so much sense for him to be in his nightgown or in his dressing gown. And Hamlet says to his mother, "Let him not come to your bed and pat you with his fingers," and all of that.
A pair of reachy kisses and call you his mouse and all of that, right?
Yeah, the mousetrap, right?
Yeah.
It's beautiful the way that goes together. And that stage direction is really important for understanding the relationship between Gertrude and old Hamlet. She is his wife, and in the early modern period, that meant basically obedient. It's you vow obedience in those days in your marriage vows, and it's not, it doesn't go the other way in the old vows, that you do not promise to obey your wife, but the wife promises to obey her husband, and that means in bed too. I've seen several. Did you write to me that there was did you have an actor an actress who was expecting who played Gertrude?
No, that wasn't me.
Okay, all right.
But
That
I do think that if you
I see.
make this distinction, like, and I want to talk about, because I know another thing that is awesome about you is you have actually staged a production of the Q1 Hamlet. So you really know your text and you really know what you're talking about. But I do think that if you make this distinction, if you go Q1 and you age all these characters down, it definitely changes the motivation of the characters. It's especially Gertrude, because I always argue that if Gertrude is 43, 44, approaching 50,
Right.
she's definitely beyond childbearing age. And
Mm-hmm.
so Hamlet telling her, don't go to my uncle's bed, is just about him not being able to fathom that she would continue to be intimate with this snake who has killed his father. If you go Q1, there's an element of don't go to his bed, because if you get pregnant and give him
Yeah.
an heir, I have no future.
Yes,
If you
that's
go
right.
Q2, you could argue that one of the reasons Gertrude accepts the marriage is because she
Mm.
knows she can't give a child to Claudius, and therefore there won't be an heir. And when Claudius moves on, Hamlet will be king. And she has actually preserved her son's legacy by marrying the king, as
Oh,
opposed to Claudius marrying a younger woman and having a child, and then she and Hamlet are both out on the street.
that's right. That's right. And that's what Claudius would. He doesn't want to lose Gertrude, but he says in the confessional scene that I can't say I'm sorry because I lose what I did the crime for, my crown,
And my
uh,
queen.
and my queen,
Yeah.
yes. And there's a scene in this very unique to Q1, and it's scene 14, and it's a scene where Horatio comes to Gertrude privately, secretly, to warn her that to tell her that Claudius wants to kill Hamlet. It gives Gertrude um, it gives Gertrude a depth that she does not have in Q2 or F. She just doesn't have it. We don't know when she drinks the poison, whether she's obeying, she disobeys, she apologizes for disobeying her lord, Claudius. In Q1, she does not apologize. She says, no, I will drink this. And in scene 14, when Horatio comes to her and says, what are we going to do? This is planned. Hamlet's going to be murdered. And Gertrude says, well, you need to go to him, give him this. And she gives Horatio, let's imagine there's no stage direction there to say what she gives him. She gives him a token that maybe it's a ring or maybe it's a locket, something that Hamlet knows is hers. Give this to him and warn him. And it's that warning that tells us that Gertrude is innocent of any knowledge of the murder of what Claudius has done. Scene 14 exonerates Gertrude from any question of collaborating with Claudius in, or even knowing about the murder of old King Hamlet. Um, and also, it gives her a relationship with Hamlet like a mother. She's his mother. She wants to protect him. She wants to make sure that he has as much ammunition as he needs to protect himself. That's the only way she can protect him, and she depends on Horatio, always the messenger, to convey that message to her son.
She seems to
And
have, even in the folio version, she seems to have some sort of suspicion, because when he says, I must to England, you know that. And she says, alas, I have forgot. And then she's about to say something else, and he says, "Let it work."
Yeah,
And then he
right.
says, I will, I will destroy them. They will hoist with their own petard, right? Like he says, don't worry about it. I got this handled, Mom. I'll be fine. But
Yeah,
whatever you do, don't you go back to my uncle's bed.
right.
So she seems to have some sort of forethought that this whole sending him to England is a dangerous idea.
Well, since Shakespeare wrote, I think he wrote the Hamlet, and that it appears in print as Q1 Hamlet, and it's been revised from to Q1. But he wrote that first. So when he's like Goethe wrote Faust very early in his career as a writer, and he revised it all his life until it reached what he saw as the perfect and finished play. Uh, Shakespeare can be compared to that with Hamlet, very like Goethe. And so since he created that queen first, the younger queen, the queen of scene 14, the queen who tries to protect her son, during the revision process, he can't get that out of his head. That's the queen that he initially created. So even though he's revising her, and he revises her down, she's a much stronger queen in Q1 than she is in Q2F. But he can't get rid of all of that. He can tone it down, and that's what he does. But he doesn't eliminate it completely. And so we have these moments with Gertrude where we think, oh, are, first of all, oh, are they in on this? Your first introduction to Hamlet, when you first see it. Why is Gertrude so why did she marry her brother-in-law? And why did she marry him within weeks? Or what is it, 2 weeks,
Within a
4 weeks?
month, he says.
Within a month. So we don't know exactly, but pretty quickly, the funeral meets did serve, or the wedding feast did serve
I've
for.
seen scholarly study and from lawyers who have said that there would have been a very specific estate planning reason for that. It would have been about inheritance. It would have been about before 3 months' time. If she didn't marry before 3 months' time, she would have lost a lot of her lands. Claudius now basically usurps all of her holdings by becoming her husband. Thus, the whole thing about imperial jointress, what's hers is mine. And that would have been part of the scheming on his part, was to make sure that wedding happens before Hamlet gets his inheritance.
No, I agree with that. I completely agree with that. And my graduate students, this semester, did put on a mock trial, and they did talk about her motivation being based in her property and in her rank, not losing it. And they used the Q2 text, knowing they're all very aware of my feeling about the Q1 text. I was in London last week, and I went to the British Library, and they still have the sign on the first quarto that it's a bad quarto. So I have now notified them that this sign needs to be updated. We'll see.
Good for you. I hope they do. Good for you.
We'll see if they do it. They'll be like, oh, and another one of these interfering professors. But I will
Well,
fight for that.
That is such a subjective term, bad. What
Bad.
makes it bad? Who decides that it's bad? What evidence do we have that it is bad and not early? Who can say?
Right, exactly. Who can say? It's a it was bad quarto. The term came from scholars, Oxford scholars, Gregg and Pollard. Who Pollard was the scholar who came up with the idea. Before that, Q1, which was not rediscovered until 1823, Q1 was recognized as a performance text. And certainly the title page tells us this is a performance text. And it has two names that are exactly the same as Q2 on the title page, written by William Shakespeare and published by Nicholas Ling. And if they have the same publisher and the same author on the title page, could it really be a text that was memorized by an actor and surreptitiously sold to a disreputable printer? It's the exact same publisher, Nicholas Ling. He does have two different printers, Valentine Sims, who printed Q1, and it's a much better print job. And then James Roberts, who printed the second quarto with bleed through and broken type and all kinds of problems. But that's a book history issue and not a Hamlet issue per se.
What was it like to direct? Now, I know it was a student production, but what was it like to direct the Q1 text with a group of actors for performance? Did they question the differences? Were they really familiar with the Q2 or the folio at all? Or did you make sure that they weren't, or that was just like kept out of the rehearsal hall? How did that work out?
The first time I directed it twice, and the first time was with a resident, sorry, not community theater, but come on, help me with the R word.
Regional?
Regional, thank
Yeah.
you. A regional company, Hoosier Bard Productions in Indianapolis, and they are actors in Indianapolis, and some of them are equity. Most of the company was not equity, but they were not students. They were actors in the community, and all of them fabulous, and all of them still acting in Indy. And the second time I directed it was students at Florida State University, where I teach. So I would say yes, with the actors in Hoosier Bard, when we did our table reading, when we did our book work, those questions did come up. Several of the actors knew about the different texts and the different motivations of the queen, and but they, you know, they took what they believed and their argument that they preferred they kept it in their interpretation of the character, the way they presented it, but all of them stayed on the Q1 text. Of course, they were all very professional and didn't question it once we had an initial discussion of the three texts of Hamlet and the reason that there are three texts and the differences between the three texts. They took it, they understood it. They were mostly familiar with conflated texts, so it wasn't a hard leap to just go to Q1 and try to pretend like Q2 and F never existed.
Well, I always find that I think the best texts are the ones that in the annotation will tell you, here's what Q1 would have said, here's what Q2 would have said, and usually there's an editor's note at the beginning that says, for the purposes of this text, we are using this, but we're going to tell you where we have variated and why throughout the text in the annotation. I think that's the most helpful.
I think so too. And I've edited Hamlet only once, and it was a folio. The copy was full. I used the folio because of the publishers, what they wanted. And I did not edit Hamlet for the New Oxford Shakespeare, which is fine. I am editing Q1 Hamlet for a new version that will come out in a year or two. And I'm going to keep that in mind, putting those annotations in, because you're not the only person that has said that, but it's been a while since I've heard it from actors that they want to hear about the variant texts and why.
Oftentimes, it's just a simple word choice that helps with clarification, I think, in delivery of the line. And, you
Right.
look at it and you go, well, in Q1, it says this word, but in Q2, it says this word. In the folio, it says that word. Which one seems to make the most sense in the delivery of the line, the motivation of the character in the moment? Can we do some etymology here and figure out, did this word mean something different at the time so it makes more sense? And so therefore, this is maybe an editor's choice to change the word to a modern definition instead of a more antiquated definition. I think that kind of scansion is important.
Well, a great example of it is that this too solid flesh would melt,
Mm-hmm.
dissolve itself into a dew. Now, if you're using Q2 as your copy text, then it's sallied. Oh, that this too sallied flesh, which is not really a word, and it must have been a compositor's mistake. Although some scholars gloss it as dirty, this dirty flesh, but solid. If you look at the whole passage, oh, that this too sallied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew, or would a too solid flesh, that's more likely to melt and thaw and resolve itself into a dew than a sallied flesh, which really doesn't make a lot of sense.
And
So,
I've seen it interpreted as sullied with a
and
U, sullied
is,
flesh, right? As in stained, right?
yeah, and that's in the folio. So we have solid, sallied, and sullied. Uh, and you it depends on your text and how faithful you want to be to the text. When you're editing, if you're editing, I'm going to use Q2, so I'm going to use the word sallied, and then I'm going to gloss it. But and that's a clean way to edit. It really is. And but as an edit, because if you change it, then you're making a conflated text. But to me, I think it was solid flesh from Q1, and it got changed either an actor's addendum, or which I don't think, or a compositor's error. There's I skip. There's grabbing the wrong letter out of the
There's running out of letters.
running out of letters.
I mean, that is a real thing back then. When I work with
absolutely.
modern students today, when I work with young people and I talk to them about setting type, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. And
Yeah.
what happens if you go to your tray of letters and they're not there and you don't have them? Now what?
Exactly.
And they're like, wait a minute, is that a thing? I'm like, yes, that was very much a thing. What are you talking about?
Absolutely. No question about it. It's compositors were making choices based on what they had to work with. There's no question. And based on their the lighting, if they were having trouble seeing, if there wasn't enough light, if the type was broken, or if they just didn't, there was no standardized spelling, which is one reason we have the Hamlet question. It didn't exist. Shakespeare himself spelled his name, I think, 7 different ways. That number can be argued because I'm not exactly sure.
Well, we have 6. I think there's 6 signatures and 5 different spellings among them. I think 2 of them are the same.
Yeah, and there are many words that are spelled different ways within the texts, the manuscripts we have. None of Shakespeare's, of course. We have one
If
page.
only, if we could just, if just one,
Oh, I know.
if just one errant page would show up somewhere, it would answer so many questions, wouldn't it?
Yes. Whenever I see pictures of the Blitz, I think, oh, what burned? What was destroyed? Were there more Q1 Hamlets? Was there?
I never even thought of that, but that is such a true consideration, isn't it? When the Germans are bombing the hell out of London and other parts of England, like, who knows what was destroyed. Who knows what was hidden in the walls of certain buildings that are no longer there? Like, I didn't even think of that, but that could be a big reason why it's so hard to find things now. That's a really good point.
You see those black and white pictures of these people peeking through the rubble of London, and of course the lives that were lost. That's the first thing you think of, but beyond that, there are lives that are in print or in paint or in sculpture or whatever. Usually, we think of England's culture as primarily literary. And what was lost, we cannot imagine, because we have so much more from Charles II. When after Charles II's papers began to be kept underground, we have more than what we had before. So we know that there must have been manuscripts, books, records, diaries, journals, bank accounts, whatever, that were not underground, that were destroyed. Either during the Blitz, there was also the Great Fire of London, that burned down so much right there along the river, where between St. Paul, I mean, it burned St. Paul's,
Yeah.
and the book lenders and the printers were all in and around St. Paul's churchyard, and from St. Paul's down to the river, and that was all burned. So yeah, we lost a lot between the fire, and I think there was a second fire, not as bad or not in the same area of St. Paul's. And then the Blitz, for whatever reason, St. Paul's was spared, but all those, Fleet Street, all of
Yeah.
that area.
All the bookstalls. Yeah.
Oh my
That's an
gosh.
important point. How did the audiences receive performances of the Q1 Hamlet, and how did you identify it? I mean, did you in the advertising, in the show posters, in the programs, did you obviously you had to clearly let people know this is the Q1 Hamlet you're coming to see, this is what you're about to witness. Certainly you must have included something in the program with notes about the differences of or something that so that people who love Hamlet so much sit down in the audience and like, wait a minute, that's not the right speech. Wait a minute, this scene doesn't belong here. I always tell actors, let's see, I've done 5 Hamlets now, 2 of which I performed the role. But I always tell actors that, P.S., this is the one. This one and Romeo and Juliet, they'll sit there and they know the lines. And if you get it wrong, they will tell you.
Yes, absolutely, they will. Oh yes. Well, we look at the title pages, we look at the text that we have, because we can't go back to the original. We don't have the posters, we don't have the playbills. Most of them we have a few, but not for him. And but if you look at the title page of Hamlet, you see that it was performed in the city of London and in the 2 universities, Oxford and Cambridge, that's named on the title page. So we know it was performed at the universities. And if it was enough to put it on the title page, we can maybe make the assumption, I know a scholar shouldn't do that, but we can maybe imagine that because it was played in the universities, the university students liked it and went to it, because otherwise, why put it on the title page? This play was staged in London and in the 2 universities. We know it was performed there. It's on the title page. Now, Q2 does not say it was performed at all. It says it's newly printed. It's newly expanded with new scenes. There's new stuff is up here on the title page, but it doesn't say anything about it being performed. And it's a very long text, as Kenneth Branagh showed in his film adaptation. It's a
Yes.
very long text. And And so it would have had to have been cut if it was going to be staged at the Globe after 1599. It would have to be in the early reign of James. Um, and I mean, there's a whole other thing going on once James is on the throne. But to stick to the title pages, Tiffany Stern writes about the title pages being playbills where they could be posted around town and then serve as the title page. So we can imagine that this was a pretty popular play. It's referred to in different pamphlets. It's referred to um, in Henslowe's diary. We have Hamlet listed being played here and there. So it was being performed enough so that Shakespeare would want to revise it, and it would continue to be played even after his death in 1616, because the first folio was not given to the Jaget syndicate until 1622, 20. It was published in 23, and the same year that Anne Hathaway died. But then it went on to be played, and we know about it from the primary actors when the theater reopened after Cromwell's death and the Restoration. Charles opened the theaters, and Hamlet was right up there. And Joseph Taylor, who succeeded Burbage as the primary actor for the King's Men. Um, Also, that another thing about Gertrude and the revision of the play, as it continued to be revised, we have a Danish queen in England, Queen Anne, the
Yes, that's
wife.
very important.
Mhm. And I went to Copenhagen to interview Gabriel Axel, who made a film called The Prince of Jutland. And in the beginning of the film, there's an epigraph that says, my mother read me the tales of the Danish King Amleth as a bedside story, and a bedtime story, sorry. And I have taken Hamlet and brought it back to Denmark in my medium, which is film, as Amleth, to reclaim our Danish prince. That he doesn't belong to England; he belongs to Denmark. So if you can get a hold of that, I will show you. I'll send you an image of the VHS. I don't think it's out on DVD. I cannot get this translated. It's in Danish, and I don't speak Danish. But the film starred Gabriel Axel as Fenga, Christian Bale as Amleth, and Helen Mirren as Geruth, Queen Geruth. It's a really interesting film adaptation of the Saxo Grammaticus.
Does he take it all the way? I mean, because in the original version, Amleth in his pretended madness, and that's the one thing I think you see that's so clear about the original version, is that Amleth basically tells us, yes, this is the tactic I'm going to use, as opposed to Hamlet, who we have to wonder, is he, that there's that big debate, right? Is he actually crazy? Is he only pretending to be crazy? How much of his mental disturbance is real? How much of it is feigned? But Amleth tells us specifically, yeah, this is my ploy. I have to do this to save my own life.
Yes.
And he literally goes and rolls around in pig slop, right? And comes in smelling like pig shit. And if there's nothing more crazy than that.
And that's in the film. Yeah. He lives, he becomes king, he marries Ophelia, Ophelia.
Yeah.
He marries Ophelia, and yes, and exacts his revenge by tying their shoes or their laces together and setting the mead hall on fire. He's very much of a Viking,
Yes.
Hamlet.
Yeah.
And but Fenga kills the king.
I feel like Mad Tom. I feel like Edmund Um,
Oh yeah. I,
Edgar does the same thing, right? When he becomes Mad Tom in Lear, right? He's basically
yeah.
stealing a page out of the Hamlet book.
Yeah, he is exactly. Yes, he is. And it was a really interesting conversation to have with Gabriel Axel, who is now passed away. He was the director of Babette's Feast, and a very well-known Danish director, but not except for Babette's Feast, we're not that familiar with his work here. It was remade in the States as Royal Deceit, which was a terrible film and disappointed Mr. Axel terribly, because they lost much of what made the film The Prince of Jutland uh, great, by taking it back to its original, uh, the original legend, Danish legend. By the time Shakespeare picked it up, whether it was Saxo or Belforet, seems to have been Belforet, but we have that question about language. We're sure he knew Latin. Parkonen writes in his biography about Shakespeare's education in Stratford, and he would have known Latin and probably Greek. In any case, wherever he got it, he made it his own, and he made it England's. He made it a very English story, even though the setting is Denmark. But there's so much in there that we can compare to what's going on in the government, in the monarchy in England at that time.
I want to
The,
ask you about a couple other credits on your list that I'm not familiar with, but I think are well, I know one for certain is definitely connected. You have here a production called Young Hamlet. What is that?
yeah,
Is that sort of like based on your book and you turned it into a stage play? Is that a one person show? It's a monodrama. What is that?
that, that's Q1 Hamlet that I directed for Hoosier Bard Productions in Indianapolis.
Okay, I
We
see.
play Young Hamlet.
That's what you
We
decided to call it.
Yes,
I
we
gotcha.
advertised it as Young Hamlet. The poster is Young Hamlet, and we staged that at the Indianapolis Fringe Theater, and we had a line that in the middle of winter in an ice storm that wrapped around the block a couple of times. We added shows. The idea of this young Hamlet, uh, we had him in we had him in sunglasses. He was this, we didn't update it to a particular time like modern times, but it was uh in sometime maybe in sometime in the 20th century or around World War II or between the wars. It But Hamlet was such a punk with his leg draped over when the opening scene when he's sitting in the court with Claudius and the queen being introduced,
I am too much in the sun.
yes, he's sitting there with mirrored sunglasses and black jeans and boots, and then one leg up over the arm of the chair and the other leg down and slumped down, and just very punky Hamlet. But by the end, I cast a Horatio, woman actor. She was perfect for the role, and the two of them really made that play happen. Tom Cardwell was the actor who played Hamlet. He was perfect for that particular interpretation, but the text was Q1 Hamlet. So, yeah, it
And then
was.
tell me about the history of Cardenio.
Oh, right. Well, that's the so-called lost play of Shakespeare. Cardenio is a story in Don Quixote, by Cervantes, who, by the way, died on the same day as Shakespeare, lived the same time. We don't think of them as contemporaries,
Is
but
it
they were.
connected at all to Cardanius Comfort, which so many people believe is the book that Hamlet is carrying when he's reading in the text? Or are those
No, but
completely separate from each other?
They're completely separate. They're completely separate. But we played that up a little bit because we were getting ready to do Cardenio to open the theater at the university. And that was a university production, but I also had professional actors involved. Um, it it's the story of Cardenio in Don Quixote, and Violante, the Spanish, the Moorish Spanish girl who is raped, and then the court of there's a court. There is a sheep herder. There are village people, not the guys that sing YMCA. There are people
That would be a production.
oh God. We have fragments of that play. It's co-authored by Shakespeare and John Fletcher. We know that it existed. We have records of it. Being performed in the court of James. And it was due to be performed for Prince Henry, but he died of typhus when he could be married. But it was going to be performed at his wedding, and we have fragments of it. And the scholar Gary Taylor, who's also a Shakespeare editor and a very well-known author, scholar and editor of Shakespeare and early modern drama, he took the fragments and recreated or revisioned the play. He completed the play. So in the book, in our collection of essays on the recreation of Cardenio, in the back there is the text of Cardenio, reimagined, revisioned, taken the fragments, and then writing the rest of the play. And right now it's being prepared to be performed in Madrid at the university there in Spanish. It's been very well received in Europe, but so far we haven't gotten an American company to stage it. And it was really, really good when it was fun to direct. Cardenio himself is you would love to act this character, I promise you. It's just wonderful. I can send you a copy of the script if you'd like.
Of course, I would love that. I did get the opportunity to play Don Quixote in a stage play version, an adaptation, not long ago. But unfortunately, we got one performance and then COVID shut it all down.
Oh, yes. I know. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was sad. It was a really good show too, and I was very proud of the work that I did in that show. But I got one night on stage in front of one audience, and then that was it. It was over.
Yeah, I was directing Henry V that March, and I didn't even get one. We were ready to open, and COVID hit, and we had the costumes, the Agincourt, the bows, and we had it all. And yeah. So I know your heartbreak.
You feel my pain. Yes, thank you.
Feel your pain. I definitely do. But I was able to, with this same company at the School of Theater at FSU, stage Q1 Hamlet, which I also called Young Hamlet, by the way. So I had two productions of Young Hamlet that were actually Q1 Hamlet. And in the program and in the director's notes, I made that very clear that the text by Shakespeare, that I argue is by Shakespeare. Not all scholars agree with me, but more and more do, and many more now than when I wrote my dissertation, which was called the Shadow of Shakespeare in the First Quarto of Hamlet. I call it the First Quarto, and that's what I go with. It's either Q1 or the First Quarto, which is why I have to write to the British Library and have them change that bad quarto sign on their exhibit. But who knows if they'll do it or not for an American? Who knows?
Yeah, that is a tricky part of it, right? But I think it's a great argument. And And, quickly before I let you go, though, the only other thing I wanted to touch on was, and we touched on it briefly, was the Nash reference to Hamlet, and him mentioning this, obviously earlier version, because that
Yeah.
reference is from 1589, which means by 1589, not only was he familiar with a play called Hamlet, but he knew that it was a lengthy play. He knew that it was full of speeches, which I think is obvious from his comments. And it obviously had been popular enough that to reference it in such a way, sort of a tongue-in-cheek mockery sort of way, means that enough people who were going to read what he wrote had to be familiar enough with it to make it funny, or else what's the joke? Like, why the joke if nobody would get the joke?
Yes. So
and you point that out in your studies, and I'd like you to sort of elaborate on that and how that to you feels like maybe the dot on the exclamation point of this decision that the Q1 is an early draft of the play.
Yes, I addressed that in an article I wrote, which you can access online. It's called Enter Hamlet 1589. It will just pop up under my name. But having said that, if you want a longer explanation, for me, Nash really is crossing the T's and dotting the I's, because he's referring to a play that if you know the play, you know exactly what he's talking about. And if that play were not popular and was not being performed by 1589, he could never have written what he wrote. And he was, as we know, that he was a playwright as well as a play goer. And he wrote things in pamphlets, and I want to say that and I'm very careful in saying this, but I want to say that he's one of the very early theater critics, maybe even the first live theater critic, because he seems to be selling the play. He seems to be recommending the play.
I think I would call him more of like an entertainment gossip columnist.
Well, yeah.
He's kind of like a Page Six kind of guy, I think, maybe. I don't know.
Page Six. That's really good, Stephen. I didn't think of that. Yes. I think that's the beginning of what branches out. Let's say it branches out
Sure.
Entertainment Tonight to Michael Billington in The Guardian. It had all started in one place and then branches out as the different people become people who want to comment on performance, so that readers, and again, the rate of literacy is rising very, very quickly, as we saw happen with the iPhone. Once it was there, how quickly we became literate with to the use of the iPhone. He begins a tradition, and he begins a tradition of writing about plays, and he begins it with Hamlet, and he begins it with a play that is popular enough that his readers will know what he's talking about. So I'm very excited about that. And that's why I wrote the longer article on Nash. Thomas Nash is a gift to early modern scholars.
Yeah, well, he really sort of, stabs at the author. And, I think Nash is also the one who kind of refers to him as like our modern Seneca, I think is one of the references there, right? So he says this is a guy who is pretending to be something he's not. And if you catch him, and like I think you point out in your research that he says, if you catch him on a chilly morning, he will, bombast out full Hamlets, right?
Well, we have Robert Greene. Have you read the Upstart Crow passage?
Yeah, Green's groat's worth of wit.
Yes, there you go.
Of course.
We have that to compare Um, there's a tradition, I don't know how far back it goes, but I think it goes back as far as Chaucer. There's a tradition of criticism and satire and uh, to make fun of those people who are easy targets.
I would argue it
And
goes all the way back to Aristophanes with shows like The Frogs, right? I mean,
oh yeah. But I'm thinking of the Brits particularly, and especially like The Wife of Bath, like. But yes, we can definitely go back to the Greeks and the Romans with, well, look at satire, satyr, the whole
Mm.
Claudius. We're back to Claudius again, the satyr. Um, I think that Nash and Green sit in those seats. They're important, and they're important to us to know what critics thought of Shakespeare and what they thought of all the playwrights that they write about and the performances that they see. Green is particularly nasty and jealous, but that's what critics do. You read some things that you just go, whoa, that ouch.
I think you hit it on the head though there. I think nastiness comes from jealousy. And I think to some degree it's, again, let's steal a line from Hamlet. Methinks the lady doth protest too much. Methinks, Green doth protest too much. He's obviously bitter. He's the Salieri, as it were.
Oh, yeah, he is a Salieri. That's really good. And that's valuable stuff to have, whether they're jealous and nasty like Green, or satirical and funny and maybe on point like Nash. Those little references that we find here and there are massively important to our
Shaw was
overall.
particularly nasty, and I think it's clear
Yeah,
that he had this, love-hate relationship with the works of Shakespeare, and I think he saw this great master and it made him intimidated. That's what I see in his criticisms.
Yeah, he Shaw and Shakespeare, that's a whole another hour that we could go on.
We could do another one on Tolkien too, right? Because, here's Tolkien. Oh, Shakespeare blew it here, here, and here, but here's where I'm going to steal right from his work, so.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. Oh yes, Tolkien, we could yeah, and that would be really good. We could do Shakespeare, Shaw, and Tolkien, and more. And Billy.
Well, we'll put a pin in that one and look back on that for a future episode then.
Yes, I would love that. I do teach Irish theater, so Shaw is a good friend. And my start in musical theater included the role of Eliza. So I have a very I have a conflicted relationship with Shaw as well.
I had just way off point, but to connect to your Irish theater studies, I had the great pleasure of interviewing when I was in LA and I worked for LA Stage Times magazine. I interviewed Wilson Milam, known for his Tony-nominated work with The Lieutenant of Inishmore, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And one of the things that I use all the time, one of the things that he said to me, and I use it in rehearsals with actors all the time, is he said, the text is your trail of breadcrumbs out of the scene. And if you lose the trail, you're stuck in the scene forever. And I tell that to actors all the time as a way to motivate them to, first of all, get off book and learn your damn lines. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in the scene forever.
Isn't that the hardest thing to do? One of my when I became a director, I was shocked that so many don't come in knowing their lines. I remember learning in school, in theater school, you have to show up to the audition ready to be off book. And it's very frustrating. Yes, that's something I have to get better at, getting them to be off book.
Oh, that's
But
every director's bane, across the universe. I'm certain, and I tell actors, you know what the difference between a great show and just a good show is how early you get off book.
yes, exactly. So you can invest
I can do everything. I can give you the set, the props, the costumes, the lighting, the sound cues. I can promote your show. I can make sure tickets are selling. I can put an audience here. The one thing I cannot do for you is learn your lines for you.
exactly. Learn your lines. And getting that Henry V ready, that I never got to stage. We ended up doing a Zoom reading about a month later. Was getting my Henry V off book. It was a challenge, and even right when we had spring break and we were coming back to stage Henry V, and I told them, you don't take a break, you're gonna get off book while this is a week, and I don't want to lose this week, but here it is. And um and I I hated not staging that Henry V, but I was immediately relieved of thinking that he was going to not know his soliloquies. Oh yeah, it's fun, isn't it? It's
We did
great.
Hamlet last year, and I tell every Hamlet the same thing, which is learn the soliloquies first.
Yes, learn the soliloquies
Learn the
first.
soliloquies first.
Great advice.
Dialogue is so much easier. You have other actors on stage to help you, but learn the
Mhm.
soliloquies first.
Great advice. I'm going to remember that. I'm more of an actor. I'm more of a musical theater person than anything. That's my base. But when
Well, and in
I
musical theater, what do? Learn the songs first,
yeah, learn the song.
right?
Yeah,
Music
right.
rehearsals come first.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much, Terri, for spending this time with me and for my listeners. It's been a delightful conversation. I know we could just go on for hours. As I said at the top, geeking out about just having you at all, and how fun to be able to share our mutual love for this particular play, but also the works of Shakespeare in general. And I will bother you and take you up on having you back as a future guest on another topic. I do want to let everyone know you can find Terri's book, Shakespeare and the First Hamlet. It is available on Amazon and through other booksellers. Shakespeare and the First Hamlet. The paper that she referenced just a little while ago is exactly how I first found her, and it is an incredible read. When you find it, you will find it pop up with a French subtitle and connection, because you must have published it for some French journal, I want to say.
I presented it in France at the Sorbonne, and then it came through them to its first publication. But it is in English.
It is.
But
It's
it is
fully in English, but it just pops up with this like French title because it came through them. That's like the most easy to find is the thing. So I just want listeners to know that if you find that and go, well, this is all in French, it's not. It's in English. She presented the paper in English, but to the French Literary Society of some sort, right?
right. Yes, yes. And also there's my very first monograph is Young Shakespeare's Young Hamlet. And when you put it into Amazon, it comes up as something different. So you have to sort of add my name to it. But Young Shakespeare's Young Hamlet is my first book. And then Shakespeare and the First Hamlet is very recent. And that's a collection with other scholars who argue through performance and text for the veracity and authenticity of Q1 Hamlet, the first Shakespeare Hamlet. So,
She is Terri Bourus. That's TerriBours. Bourus. You can find her online. You can find her work. And thank you again, Terri, for joining us.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, everyone, for listening to my passion and my love for this magnificent play in all of its iterations, but especially Q1. Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it.
I am now thoroughly convinced of a young Hamlet, an early Hamlet, first written by a much younger writer, perhaps struggling with the tribulations of wardship, angered over his mother's new marriage, his sister's attempt to denounce him as a bastard, those around him cheating him out of his inheritance because he had not come into his majority yet. I'm good with a Q1 that demonstrates earlier writing, more draft-like in style, that would eventually mature into the version which was then created for posterity in the first folio. I think our guest makes a perfectly compelling argument which fits that narrative to a T, or shall I say, to an EDV. I want to thank Professor Bourus once more for sharing her time and research with us. Remember, you can find her work through a quick search on Amazon, where her work as one of the 4 editors of the new Oxford Shakespeare will undoubtedly pop up, but also her own publications as well. So you can read in more detail her research and her positions on Shakespeare's first Hamlet. A quick shout out to producer Jake, who has uploaded some new designs to the swag shop. I just placed my most recent order, including the new Serial Quiller t-shirt design. Pop on over there to see the latest swag. And congratulations to our June Quiller of the Month, Sandi Boney, who was our June winner. And hopefully she picks out a new piece of swag, probably the Serial Quiller t-shirt, or maybe a hoodie. And now let's throw it over to Jake to announce our July Quiller of the Month.
We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. Remember that from Independence Day? Remember the speech from Independence Day? It's very Shakespearean, that speech. Also, did you know that it was a placeholder? They never intended for it to be in the movie, but they forgot to change it. And then Bill Paxton just did it so well that they were like, okay, anyways, I'm getting off track. Hi, Quillers. Happy 4th of July. And to the American Quillers, of course. Happy, just basic, normal week in the summer and or winter, depending on what hemisphere you are. If you're not in the United States, okay, I'm all over the place. Anyways, it is my privilege once again to pick the Quiller of the Month, this time for the month of July 2026. If you're not sure what this is, head on over to patreon.com/don'tquillthemessenger and find out. Each and every month, all of our eligible Quillers are entered into a random drawing. The winner, which gets to choose an item of their choosing from the shop and has their name in lights for all of eternity. So without further ado, the wheel is spinning, and the official Quiller of the Month for July 2026. Well, look at that. Once again, back-to-back, Sandi Boney. Sandi Boney, congrats for yet another Quiller of the Month victory. Just goes to show you there's no limit to the amount of times you can win. Every month you are an eligible Quiller, you are in the drawing. I don't know if this is the very first time ever we've had a back-to-back. I'm trying to look through the stats here. I think maybe it happened once before, but if not, first time ever, which is kind of surprising in the 5 years that we've been doing this. But there you have it. Sandi Boney, back-to-back Quillers of the Month. Quiller of the Month. How would you say that? Anyways, congratulations, Sandi. As always, keep an eye on your email. Hey, as Stephen said, we got a brand new Serial Quiller merch in the shop. Maybe you snag 2 different colors if that's what you're into. I tried to design that with like a fun like murder mystery book vibe. I tried to make it look like an old murder mystery novel. That was what I was going for. Hopefully I succeeded. Hope you guys enjoy that design. Congrats again. Thanks to all the Quillers. Back to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Jake. And thank you to all of you serial Quillers out there for your continued support of the program. I promise you we have some more thrilling and intriguing guests to come in the episodes forthcoming as we strive here to keep asking questions.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please leave a rating and review in your podcast player. For even more, visit our website, don'tquillthepodcast.com. There you can find official merchandise in our shop, as well as a link to our Patreon. This show is made possible by people like you. We hope you'll consider showing your support by becoming a monthly patron, where you'll receive bonus material and tons of exclusive perks. You can also join in the conversation on our Discord and by following us at Don't Quill the Pod on all social media. All of this can be found at don'tquillthepodcast.com, don'tquillthepodcast.com.
It's Dragon Wagon.
You know, I said Bill Paxton before when I was referencing Independence Day, the movie, but it was Bill Pullman. Wrong Bill. Just wanted to correct that. Happy 4th, everybody.